guys, my name is Kelly. Today I'm going to be talking about something that I've wanted to make a video about for a long time, and that is fiber content and how you can use knowledge of fiber content to help you shop more sustainably. So this applies not only to if you're shopping for ready-to-wear clothing, but also if you're shopping for fabric to sew. And I will mention a few things about purchasing fabric in this video, but I'm going to leave timestamps below of when I talk about certain things, so if you don't buy fabric and you're just looking for information for shopping, you can skip over those parts. So first things first, I did want to thank the commenter who commented on my second to last video about this topic and asked some questions, because like I said, I've wanted to talk about this for a while, but you really inspired me to go ahead and do it, so thank you so much. And first of all, I wanted to say that when I use the term sustainability, I'm generally not only talking about the environmental impacts, but I'm also talking about the social impacts. I've taken classes solely about sustainability in my major, and one of the things that I didn't know about sustainability prior to that class is that it technically has 3 pillars, and those pillars are economic, environmental, and social. And obviously all brands are pretty much focusing on the economic pillar and kind of forgetting about the other 2. And in an ideal world, we would be balancing out, focusing on all 3, and brands would be making money while also not harming the environment or the people. But I just wanted to let you guys know that that's what I mean when I say that, because a lot of the times people think of sustainable as meaning environmental and ethical as meaning people-focused. And when I say sustainable and when I say ethical, I kind of mean the same thing, because to me, ethical can kind of cover both, and sustainable can kind of cover both. So next I want to talk about the classifications of fiber types and different fabrics and what they mean and what that says about their sustainability. So generally speaking, I would say there are 3 categories. There are natural fibers, there are man-made fibers, and there are synthetic fibers. And I know you're probably thinking, wait, aren't synthetic fibers man-made? They are, but there's a subcategory of man-made fibers that are not synthetic, and that's why I'm kind of making that differentiation between the 2. So natural fibers include cotton, linen, hemp, wool, silk, and leather. And generally speaking, solely because they biodegrade, I would say these fabrics are better than synthetic fabrics. Biodegradability to me is really important. Having things that don't stay in our environment forever is really important, and that's just something that I prioritize. But there are some things related to each individual fiber type that kind of differentiate how sustainable they are. So generally speaking, cotton is not a sustainable crop. Cotton is a great fiber because it breathes, it's really comfortable to wear, and it is widely used, but it takes a lot of water to grow. It takes a lot of fertilizers and pesticides, and those things run off into waterways. It has led to a lot of other issues like algae overgrowth in lakes, because like I said, when we grow cotton, we use a ton of fertilizers on it, and those things run off into lakes, and then it feeds the algae, and then the algae overgrows in the lake, and it destroys the ecosystem because other life in the lake can't live without sunlight and things like that. So there are issues related to that. Cotton also the cotton industry leads to a lot of slave labor, and in a lot of countries, people working in cotton fields are not protected from the chemicals that are used, and a lot of them are dying because of it, frankly. So in that sense, cotton is not very sustainable. Organic cotton is better, but organic crops are still being treated with things. They're just not being treated with the same things. So there are still issues related to that, and it still does use a lot of water, and it still, depending on where it's grown, can be an issue ethically with like some of the social impacts as well. But generally speaking, organic cotton is a lot better, and most companies that are prioritizing growing their crops in an organic way are also not as socially irresponsible either. But I mean, I don't know for sure, but that's something that I've noticed, just because most companies that are prioritizing one are also pretty aware of the other as well. Linen and hemp are 2 natural fibers that are a lot more sustainable, but they can be more expensive. And I find that very interesting, because if we were growing them at the same scale we were growing cotton at, they'd be so cheap, because they don't take any of the same resources that cotton takes. They grow really fast, they don't take all that extra stuff, and they just should not be as expensive, but it's because we're growing them at a smaller scale. And a lot of people think of linen as being this fiber that's like a textile that's so hard to take care of and you have to dry clean it. And a lot of linen things do say dry clean only, and that's because they're not pre-shrunk and brands don't want you to shrink your clothes and then get mad at them. But really, if you're shopping for something that is linen, sometimes it is washable and it's not hard to take care of, and just check for what the brand says. If they say it's not washable, it's probably because it hasn't been pre-shrunk. You can probably just go up a couple sizes and then wash it, but you also can look for washable linen, which has been pre-washed, or you can, if you're sewing with it, buy fabric that's linen and just wash it before you sew with it and pre-shrink it, and it'll be fine. It's not hard to take care of. It's just as easy to care for as cotton, but I think we think of it as something that's hard to take care of because of the way brands have treated it previously. So that's just something to note. Hemp is also really easy to take care of. It's kind of the same deal. It's more expensive. We don't grow it as heavily. There are lots of reasons for that, but at the end of the day, it's a very sustainable crop, and it's a good one. Wool and silk, obviously, are a little different because they're protein fibers. They do come from animals, and if you are against buying things like that, obviously, that's your decision. I am not here to tell anybody they're right or wrong. I will say there are definitely other issues related to their alternatives, so like polyester suitings that are wool substitutes are obviously unsustainable in other ways. They're also using a ton of chemicals that are getting dumped into people's drinking water. So it's kind of one of those things where you have to weigh the pros and cons. But I'm not here to tell anybody they're right or wrong. So just know that I'm totally whatever you want to do. But I personally do still buy protein fibers, but I choose to buy them secondhand 95% of the time. So leather. That's a fun one because leather is terrible for the environment. Like, it just is. It's bad. It's treated with a bunch of chemicals that are bad for the environment. It doesn't biodegrade properly because of what it's treated with. If it does biodegrade, it releases a ton of stuff into the environment that's not good, but there's really no good substitute for leather. So anything that is a widely available substitute for leather is made out of plastic. And there are some better substitutes for leather out there, but they're not widely available. So there are things like Pinatex, which is made out of pineapple fibers, and there's other ones, but I can't think of what they're called at this point in time. Like I said, they're great. They're biodegradable. They're good substitutes, but they're not widely available. And so hopefully in the future that will be a good option. Leather is another thing that I do buy secondhand. I think I've bought like a couple of really small sheets of it new, but again, 90% of the time I buy it secondhand because I'm not necessarily against using stuff that's already out there in the world, but I don't really want to support that industry either. Synthetic fabrics, like I said, the chemicals are not good for the environment. They don't biodegrade. Synthetic fabrics include polyester, nylon, lycra, spandex, acrylic, things like that. I'll leave a comprehensive list below. And man-made fibers are the most interesting ones because those include rayon, viscose, tinsel, lyocell, all of the things which are actually made of plants, but the way they're processed is what determines how sustainable they are. So generally speaking, all of those things I listed are rayons. They are produced in a way that is the same, and that way of being produced makes them rayons. But when things are labeled with rayon and labeled with viscose, they are produced in a very unsustainable way. They are produced in a system that uses a lot of chemicals, and those chemicals are generally dumped into waterways. They're not disposed of properly, and they harm the environment. But the fiber itself is made out of plants. It biodegrades. It is very breathable and very nice to wear. I will say vintage rayon fabrics are not great, and they feel plasticky even though they're not plastic. Modern day like rayon fabrics are very nice to wear. And rayon knits are so soft. But I try to stay away from rayon and viscose as much as I can. I will buy them if my only other option is polyester, because again, they do biodegrade. But as far as the production of them goes, I try to avoid them. Tinsel and lyocell are types of rayon, but they are produced in a sustainable way because they are produced in a closed loop system. The chemicals used in the processing are reused over and over and over again. They're not disposed of, and they, for that reason, don't have the negative impacts on the environment. And they are also breathable. They're made out of cellulose. They biodegrade. So the reason I give you all of that information about the differences between all the four different ones, and when I say tinsel and lyocell are the same, I mean they're produced in that closed loop system, but they're kind of like brand names like Kleenex and tissues. So I think, I can't remember which one it is, but one of them is like a specific company that makes it. So, or maybe both of them are. But anyways, they're produced more sustainably, so just good to know. One thing that frustrates me about this is that bamboo rayon is touted as being this, or bamboo viscose are both touted as being these super sustainable fabrics, because bamboo is a very, very sustainable crop. Bamboo grows like a weed. It's considered a weed in a lot of places. It grows quickly. It spreads really easily. And it's just, you don't even have to do anything to it. It just grows. But viscose and rayon are not sustainable. They're not produced in a great way. So a lot of brands will be like, oh, it's bamboo viscose, bamboo rayon. It's so sustainable. Buy this. It's a great alternative to cotton. And it's not sustainable. They just are saying it is. So I just want you guys to have that information. Just so you know what's up. But yeah, that's all I have to say about that. So why do I buy fabric secondhand? That was another question I got. The main reason I buy fabric secondhand is because regardless of the fiber type, I prefer to buy things secondhand in general. My clothes are usually purchased secondhand. My home goods are usually purchased secondhand, other than like kitchen items. I don't really buy those secondhand as much. But generally speaking, most of what I own is secondhand. That's just because when I look at the hierarchy of like how I'm going to purchase something, using what I have and not buying anything is always the best option. And that goes for everybody. But buying things secondhand, if you're going to buy something, that's the gold standard. Like, if you're going to buy something, buy it secondhand if you can. And so that's what I try to do. But, I mean, I buy things new, too. I don't only buy secondhand fabric. I don't only buy secondhand clothing. You're not wrong if you don't buy everything secondhand. I just think if you can buy things secondhand, it's a good way to not support industries that are doing things in an unsustainable way, and you're taking things out of the waste stream, and also preventing things from getting shipped overseas. A lot of our goods get shipped overseas if they're not sold in thrift stores, and that there are other social implications to that. So that's why I buy things secondhand. I don't do it all the time. I do it with most things, but especially with fabric, if I'm looking for something super specific, I'm more likely to just go ahead and buy it new if I can't find it, especially if it's like a time-sensitive project. But if I can buy it secondhand, I really prefer to. So where do I buy secondhand fabric is another question I got. And one of the places I get a lot of my secondhand fabric is actually the store I work at. So I work at a store that is technically 2 stores in one building, and they're Fence Line Fabrics and a Thrifty Notion, with a Thrifty Notion obviously being the thrift store. And then we have secondhand and dead stock fabrics. And most of them are just from people locally that drop off stuff that they're not using anymore. So I've gotten some really, really amazing silk fabrics from there. We have had some great wool in the past and different things. And so I've gotten a lot of really cool fabrics from there. I also sometimes get, and I'll link both of those shops below. We also have some cool hemp and organic cotton blend fabrics from Fence Line that are pretty awesome. So you should check those out if you so. But another place I buy secondhand fabric is eBay or Etsy. And those are great because there's lots of sellers on both those platforms. And the only thing I would say about that is to be careful, especially if you're looking for something like silk or wool. A lot of sellers will say something is wool or say something is silk and not really know if it's 100%, or they might say something silk because it has like a sheen to it and is kind of satiny, but it could be polyester. And so it's important to be wary of that and kind of know you might be getting something that's not as it's claimed. Learning more about how to identify fabrics on your own would be really helpful. So if you want me to make a video about that, I totally can. I know a lot about burn testing fabrics. For like 2 years at my job, that was basically all I did, was burn fabrics and identify what they were. And so I have a lot of knowledge about that, and I'm pretty confident in knowing, like, just from touching something what it is, and if not from touching it, from burning it, I can usually get pretty close to knowing what it is. Obviously, I can't always tell you if something burns like a cotton or linen, like differentiating for sure between the two, but generally linen and cotton behave a little differently and look a little different, so you can usually tell. It's just hard when it gets down to like linen being blended with cotton and stuff like that, but I'm not going to go too deep into that because that's a whole other topic. So if you want information on identifying fabrics, I can totally do that, but just know if you're shopping online, you may not get what you're told you're getting, and that's frustrating, but buying secondhand I still think is a great option. And I think that's all. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope that it's helpful. I can talk more about any of these things. If you have specific questions, definitely leave them below. I can do a part 2 about fiber content with more in-depth information. I can also do more videos related to shopping sustainably if there's more information you want about other aspects of the industry. I totally would love to talk about that. Just let me know. And I hope you guys have a great day. I hope you're staying sane, staying inside all the time right now. And if you have any fun activity ideas that you've been doing at home, let me know, because I'm kind of going crazy and I would love to know what you guys are doing to have fun. All right, have a great day, you guys.